Mr. Scott.
This may just be for the board, but kind of on Mr. Pearl's point, do we have something scheduled for the public? Like a vetting, if you will? Or are we just planning on the public participating in public input at a meeting before we vote?
I don't believe we have a public vetting schedule.
So would we like to do that? We'd like to schedule a meeting so that the public can come after reviewing for a couple days and then ask the board some questions?
We have a meeting on the 19th, so there will be some
Right, so
there.
my point was public input before the night we're going to vote. Is that the night we're voting on this, or? So I would make a motion for the board to hold a special meeting in between when we receive the MOUs and contract to become public information and our next board meeting to give the chance for a public to review and ask us questions.
I'll second that.
So the reason I'm making this motion is, when we had the Manchester agreement, one of the things I voiced with that agreement was I voted no, not because of the contents of the agreement so much, but just for the opportunity for the public to have their input, to make sure we didn't overlook anything. And since we signed it, we've had a lot of questions come in, and we've reconsidered some things, and some things missed our observations because it all kind of happened fast. And this is sounding like the same kind of thing again. We're going to get these contract and MOUs, and very shortly after that, quick review, we're going to vote on it. And this is the educational future of all of Hooksett kids. It's very important. It's very important that the public have time to read them, ask us questions, and hopefully we can come up with the answers for them. So that's why I made a motion.
Madam Chair, I would support the motion also because, as Mr. Lisgar says, the questions are very valuable, but sometimes the statements of the public are extremely valuable in making a decision about what we want to do. Further, I don't think I know we've never had a memorandum of understanding tuition agreement with another school. Just the mechanism itself should be explained so that people understand. I have heard people say that we're trying to get around the voters by going with this board-to-board contract. And I think it's important for us to explain exactly what it does and what the implications will be if we pass it before the night that we're going to vote on it. So I would agree that we should try to do this, and I think it will benefit the public if we can schedule this.
I just think we can do all of that on the 19th. I think to try to squeeze something in between the 13th and the 19th isn't necessarily going to be really useful. And also, Dr. Wicklow, did we request that the lawyer be at our 19th meeting as well in order to help us answer questions? I thought we did. Or was that for the information
25th.
for the 25th? Okay.
Well, Mrs. Axton,
There are no personal attacking, just.
I'm not, Madam Chair, I said a fellow board member's name because I'm responding to what she said.
Okay.
So please don't accuse me of attacking. Thank you. Mrs. Axton, I think with what you just said, it depends what side of this table you sit on. If you're sitting on the public side, and we're about to make a very large decision for the children of the parents of this community, I think it's very important that they have an opportunity to vet the contract and the MOUs with us. Ask us questions, share opinions before the night that we're going to vote on it. I don't think that sounds too ridiculous. I think leaving the public out on this very major decision would be a mistake. because the public needs to make sure their representatives are representing them and their concerns, not just some of the public, not just small groups. Make sure we're representing all of the Hooksett community. So what better way than to have a night that they can come after these are public, ask us questions, and we can do our best to answer the questions. If we're concerned that we might not have the knowledge, that might be a good night to schedule the attorney then, if we're concerned about that. But waiting till the night of the vote is not prudent, in my opinion. Thank you.
There's nothing to say that we're gonna vote that night though. So if we are hearing from the public that they're not happy with this, we don't have to vote that night. And I'm just saying between the 13th and the 19th is a very small amount of time to try to squeeze in another meeting. I just think that if we are hearing from the public and we want to discuss those things, there's nothing that says we have to, written in stone, we have to vote that night. So we are giving the public an opportunity to vet it.
Mr. Gundel?
So the way I look at this is, we're paying Dr. Phil, and we got an independent attorney to look at these agreements and work them out. Phil and him are both professionals working on our behalf. We get the agreements on the 13th, like David just said, and Phil backed him up that they will be public. On the 19th, folks have the opportunity to chime in. You guys have seen in our non-meetings, I'm not saying about the non-meeting, but the extent of these agreements, which isn't anything complicated. It's like a couple of pages, just so all you know. The difference between this and the negotiated agreement with Manchester was that we couldn't release anything because of the legality of it, and in the mediation process, obviously, items that happened during there can't be disclosed because people wouldn't do mediation if everything was public. So I think we're fine as we sit. We get everything out there on the 13th. We have 4 or 5 days to review these. It isn't like we're reviewing budgets like we were earlier tonight. It's a very quick read, and folks can chime in on the public on the 19th. I think we're fine.
So I disagree with you, Mr. Dembo. Having a short time in public input at a regular meeting where it's the will of the board, to Mrs. Axton's point, to make a vote that evening is not fair to the public. I think we can easily set up a special meeting. I believe the chair organized one recently that came together very quickly. So I think we could schedule a special meeting for the specific purpose of having the public review the MOUs and the contract. They have had no meetings with our attorney. They have had no exposure to these documents that we're now about to vote on and enact, not for, only our children, for their children. So if we could hold a special meeting for, what was it? It was for canceling, it was for canceling the public input night. That's what it was. So if we could hold a special meeting for canceling the public input night and pushing it till after we voted, why can't we schedule a special meeting to hear from the public? I think it sounds very simple, and I think the public would appreciate it.
Mr. Plum?
I would disagree with Mr. Dembo that the contents of the Manchester agreement had to stay confidential. They did up until that point, but we could have asked for a continuance. There was no will to do that. We could have had a public hearing. We could have done a lot of things. Personally, there were 2 points brought up from the Manchester agreement by members of the public after that vote that I had not considered, and I'll just go that far to say I had not even considered. And I'm glad I voted no for that. Had I heard those 2 things, I would have asked further questions, but because of the certain situations that those people were in, they were focused on aspects of the agreement that I was not. And that's why I think it's so valuable to have the public be involved and come up to this table and share their thoughts with us. So I'd offer a compromise. Why don't we make the 13th the public forum meeting, and then we can schedule a special meeting a few days after that with the express idea to vote. And
That would be a great compromise. However, on the 13th, we have a non-meeting with our attorney, followed by an SAU board meeting located here at the Harley Middle School.
I'm sorry, the next scheduled school board meeting. Did I say the 13th? The 19th, I'm sorry, I meant the 19th. So why don't we make the 19th the public hearing, public forum night, and then we could set up a special meeting a few days after that to conduct a vote. I mean, it would be a public meeting. I think that, you know, this is a big decision, and to say that we don't have time to squeeze in time to hear from the public, if that's the problem, well, we're the ones that have driven the timeline, not the public. The public has been asking for this for a long time, and we're the ones that have set up this timeline. So I think we should accommodate and get that in.
So could you please reread the motion on the floor?
John Luscard's motion that the board hold a special meeting between the time the board receives the information and prior to the board voting to give the information to the public.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? If there be no further discussion, I will call it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Sorry, I wanted to go to another motion while we have time. I motion that we make our regular meeting on the 19th a public discussion of the MOUs and tuition contract that have been presented, and call a special meeting after that time to vote on it.
I'll second that.
We were starting to discuss this under fact sheet, and you asked that we wait to move it up to high school discussion. So I think it might be hard, and John's motion failed to squeeze it in, but if we use that night to discuss that issue and notify the public, then we could call a special meeting with a specific reason for the board to discuss and vote on that issue a couple of days later or whenever. I don't think that special meeting would have to be a long meeting, but we could have that opportunity to bring it to the public before we vote.
Is there any discussion on this? If there be no discussion, I will call this to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
No.
No.